If those words just triggered a flood of childhood memories, then you already know exactly what show I am talking about. Inspector Gadget was not just a cartoon, it was a phenomenon that defined Saturday mornings for an entire generation. But here is what most people do not know. Behind the scenes, this show was an absolute battlefield of creative clashes and corporate chaos and international production nightmares that nearly destroyed it before it even aired. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. I am talking about 3 different countries trying to make one cartoon. I am talking about a voice actor who almost did not get the role because executives thought he was too old. I am talking about animation studios fighting over quality control while episodes were shipping back and forth across the Pacific Ocean. And I am talking about a show that got quietly killed off at the height of its popularity for reasons that had nothing to do with ratings. So in this video, I am going to walk you through the complete, untold story of Inspector Gadget, how it was created by a team of visionaries who had to fight their own studios to make it happen, how it became one of the most successful animated series of the 1980s, and how corporate greed and creative exhaustion brought the whole thing crashing down. Trust me, by the end of this, you will never watch those old episodes the same way again. The Genesis. Alright, let us go back to 1982. A French animator named Jean Chalopin and his partner Bruno Bianchi had this wild idea. They wanted to create a spy parody cartoon that would appeal to both kids and adults. But here's the twist. The main character would be completely incompetent. He would have all these amazing gadgets built into his body, but he would never actually solve the case himself. Instead, his niece and her dog would do all the real detective work, while he stumbled around taking credit. Now think about how revolutionary that concept was for the early 80s. Most cartoon heroes were competent and brave and always saved the day through their own abilities. Chalopin and Bianchi wanted to flip that completely. They wanted to make fun of the spy genre while also celebrating it. And they wanted to create a character who was lovable precisely because of his failures. They pitched this idea to Andy Hayward at DIC Entertainment, and Hayward immediately saw the potential. But here is where things got complicated. DIC was a relatively small studio at the time, and they did not have the resources to produce a show of this scale on their own. So they partnered with Nelvana in Canada and then outsourced the actual animation to multiple studios overseas, including TMS Entertainment in Japan. This meant that every single episode of Inspector Gadget was being worked on across 3 different continents with different time zones and different artistic sensibilities and different ideas about what the show should look like. Scripts were written in California. Storyboards were created in France. Animation was produced in Japan and Taiwan. And somehow all of this had to come together into a coherent show. The casting battle. Now let me tell you about Don Adams, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Don Adams was already famous for playing Maxwell Smart in Get Smart, which was basically the live-action version of what Inspector Gadget was trying to do in animation. He was the perfect choice for the role and everyone knew it. But here is the problem. The IC executives were worried that Adams was too closely associated with Maxwell Smart. They thought audiences would just see him as Maxwell Smart with gadgets instead of seeing Inspector Gadget as his own character. There were also concerns about his age and whether he could commit to the demanding voice recording schedule. The production team actually auditioned dozens of other actors before finally coming back to Adams. And thank God they did, because his voice became absolutely iconic. That bumbling enthusiasm and false confidence and complete obliviousness to danger, nobody else could have pulled it off the same way. Adams brought decades of comedic timing experience to every single line, and it showed. But here is something most fans do not know. Adams recorded most of his dialogue completely separately from the other voice actors. He would come in and do his lines alone, and then the other performers would have to react to recordings of his performance. This was done for scheduling reasons, but it actually helped create that disconnected quality where Gadget seems to exist in his own reality while everyone else deals with the actual problems around him. The production nightmare. So the show premieres in September 1983, and it is an immediate hit. Kids are obsessed with the gadgets. Parents appreciate the clever humor. The theme song by Shuki Levy becomes one of the most recognizable pieces of music in television history. Everything seems perfect from the outside, but behind the scenes it was chaos. The international production pipeline was constantly causing problems. Episodes would arrive from the overseas animation studios with errors and inconsistencies that needed to be fixed. Sometimes characters would be off-model. Sometimes the timing would be wrong. Sometimes entire sequences would need to be reanimated. And here's the thing that really caused tension. The Japanese animators at TMS were producing genuinely beautiful work. Their episodes had fluid movement and dynamic action and real artistic quality. But other studios working on the show were producing much cheaper-looking animation. This meant that episode quality varied wildly depending on which studio animated it. Fans who watch the show today can actually spot these differences. Some episodes look almost cinematic, with detailed backgrounds and smooth character movement. Other episodes look rushed and stiff with limited animation and obvious cost-cutting. This inconsistency frustrated the creators who wanted every episode to meet the same standard, but simply did not have the budget or time to make that happen. The creative exhaustion. By the end of Season 1, the core creative team was exhausted. Bruno Bianchi had been working non-stop to maintain quality control across multiple studios. Jean Chalopin was already developing new projects, because that was how the animation business worked. You could never rest on one success. You always had to be creating the next thing. Season 2 went into production, but something had changed. The budgets were tighter, the schedules were more demanding, and the creative energy that made the first season so special was harder to sustain. The writers started recycling plot structures. The animation quality became even more inconsistent, and the show began to feel like it was running on autopilot. Here is what really happened. DIC Entertainment was growing rapidly, and Inspector Gadget was funding that growth. But instead of reinvesting in the show that was making them successful, they were spreading resources across multiple new productions. Inspector Gadget was essentially being milked for profit while receiving less and less creative attention. The show ended in 1986 after 86 episodes. There was no big finale, no resolution to the ongoing battle with Dr. Claw, no satisfying conclusion for the characters. It just stopped. And the reason was simple. The show had served its purpose for the studio, and they were ready to move on. The Dr. Claw mystery. Now I have to talk about Dr. Claw because this is one of the most brilliant creative decisions in animation history. Throughout the entire original series, we never see his face. We only see his arms and his metal gauntlet and his cat. That is it. 86 episodes and the main villain remains completely hidden. This was an intentional choice by Bianchi and Chalopin. They understood that imagination is more powerful than revelation. Whatever face viewers imagined for Dr. Claw would be scarier and more personal than anything they could actually design. The mystery became part of the character. His unseen face became iconic precisely because it was unseen. But here is the crazy part. When later Inspector Gadget Productions finally revealed his face, fans were disappointed. The mystery had been better than the answer. This proves that the original creators understood something fundamental about storytelling that later producers forgot. Sometimes what you do not show matters more than what you do. The legacy Inspector Gadget spawned multiple revivals in movies and reboots over the decades. There was a theatrical film in 1999 with Matthew Broderick. There was an animated sequel series in 2015. There have been video games and comic books and merchandise that continues to sell today. But nothing has ever captured the magic of that original 1983 series. And I think the reason is simple. The original show was created by people who genuinely cared about making something special despite impossible production circumstances. They fought for quality when the system was pushing them toward mediocrity. They made creative choices that prioritized storytelling over merchandise potential. The influence of Inspector Gadget is visible throughout modern animation. The incompetent hero trope that the show popularized appears in countless cartoons today. The blend of action and comedy that Chalopin and Bianchi pioneered became standard for the genre. Even the visual style with its clean lines and expressive characters influenced how Western animation developed through the late 80s and 90s. The truth so here is what the story of Inspector Gadget really teaches us. Great art often comes from chaos. The international production nightmare that nearly destroyed this show also gave it a unique quality that purely American productions lacked. The budget constraints that frustrated the creators also forced them to be more creative with storytelling. The corporate pressure that eventually killed the show also pushed them to make every early episode count. Inspector Gadget succeeded not because of the system, but despite it, and that is why it endures. 40 years later, people still remember the theme song. They still quote the catchphrases. They still feel that nostalgic warmth when they see Gadget stumbling through another case while Penny and Brain do the real work. If you grew up watching this show, you were part of something special. You were watching a cartoon that was never supposed to work, made by people who refused to let it fail. And that spirit of determination against impossible odds is really what Inspector Gadget was always about. If this video brought back memories of racing to the TV on Saturday mornings, hit that like button right now. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the cartoons that shaped our childhoods. Because I have got stories about shows you love that will absolutely blow your mind. Share this with anyone who ever said, "Go Gadget," anything as a kid. I guarantee they have no idea what really happened behind the scenes of this show. I will catch you in the next one. And remember, I will get you next time, Gadget. Next time.